All right, week 3, day 5, Judges. We have a lot to cover today. We left off where Joshua has just died and the Israelites are in the land of Canaan. God has instructed the Israelites to wipe out all of the people of Canaan. And this is where we look at it and we think the Old Testament, right? God is angry and he's mean. But there was a reason for this. The Canaanites were worshiping false gods and they were doing crazy things like child sacrifice and all kinds of terrible things. God knew that, which is why he instructed the Israelites to wipe them out. The Israelites did not do that. Instead, they start intermarrying and hanging out with the Canaanites and end up worshiping Baal with them and all kinds of other things. So God is trying to help them out, and he sends them some judges. And I like what Angie Smith says, the judges kind of put a Band-Aid on a ruptured artery. And I like what my Bible says too, the notes in my Bible, throughout this period of history of Israel, during the time of the judges, the Israelites went through 7 cycles, rebelling against God, being overrun by enemy nations, being delivered by a God-fearing judge, remaining loyal to that judge, and then forgetting about God when that judge died. So we learned that there were probably about 12 to 14 judges, and the most popular of them was Samuel. So we're going to talk about him. Samuel was born to a man named Elkanah, who was from the Levite tribe, and a woman named Hannah, who God had previously, it said in the Bible that God had previously closed her womb. But Hannah prayed fervently for a child, so fervently that she went to the temple, and the priest Eli thought she was drunk because she was praying so fervently. So she ends up getting pregnant. She has a son, and that son's name is Samuel. And just as she promised, she had told God if he would give her a son, that she would give that son back to him to serve him. So after Samuel is weaned, he goes to the temple to live with Eli, who has some sons of his own who are sinful and who are not doing well. But it says about Samuel, he became both a prophet and a bridge between the period of judges and the period of rule by kings. During this time, the Israelites and the Philistines battle, and the Israelites lose because of how wicked Eli's sons were. So the Philistines, when they won the battle of the Israelites, they also took the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't keep it for long because they realized that terrible things started happening to them. And then, meanwhile, the Israelites are getting annoyed because all these other nations have kings. And so they're saying to Samuel, hey, we need a king. Samuel's saying, hey, God is your king. You don't need a king. And I like what Angie Smith says. The whole point for the Israelites was that God wanted to set them apart and make them different. But over and over again, we see them just wanting to be like everyone else. So they will get a king, and that comes later. But in between Judges and Kings, there's this book called Ruth, and it's during the time period of the Judges. And Ruth was a woman. She was married to this man whose family had moved into her land, and her husband dies, and her father-in-law also dies. So now Ruth and her mother-in-law are left, and Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, decides she's going to go back to Bethlehem and says to Ruth, listen, really, you'd probably be better off staying in your own land. And Ruth just says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with you. And this is a very popular scripture, Ruth 1:16, where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. And so she goes back with Naomi. She finds a kinsman redeemer named Boaz. And Boaz, we find out, is Rahab's son. Remember, the prostitute who housed the spies for Joshua. And Ruth and Boaz get married, and they have a son, and they name that son Obed. And Obed is the grandfather of the great King David in the lineage of Christ. So that is Ruth, and that is the Judges, and we're picking up on Kings tomorrow. Thanks for hanging with us.